Today we're going to learn how no good deed goes unpunished, my secret double life, and how to heal broken bones. Long ago there was a traveling herbal doctor who went from place to place collecting and selling medicinal herbs. One day, he came to a mountain village. He came upon a young man in the village who had just died, and his relatives were holding him and crying sadly. Knowing that the local people were a little dim, he came over to check for himself. He discovered that the man wasn't really dead. When he felt the young man's pulse, he found that it was still beating, although weakly. He approached the old man who was crying and asked him, "How did he die?" The old man said, "He died suddenly because of a high fever." Then the doctor asked, "How long ago was this?" And the old man said, "Oh, 2 hours ago." Awesome, he thought. This is going to be a slam dunk. "Listen, Grandpa, don't cry. I can take care of it." Old man said, "Please save him. He's my only son." And the doctor said, "Well, if it doesn't work out, I can give you some virility pills and you can always make more." This didn't comfort the old man. He said, "Yeah, but, try to save this one, just in case." So the doctor said, "Okay, fine." And he opened a medicinal gourd and poured out 2 pills from it. The doctor asked the people around the young man to help by opening his mouth and then pouring water after he placed the pills in the young man's mouth. After a while of sitting around and waiting, the young man finally gasped. Then the doctor said, "He'll be okay after a couple of days of bed rest." The old man kowtowed before the doctor, saying, "Great sir, you are a living Buddha. What kind of medicine is it that brings the dead back to life?" The doctor said, "It's a pellet that has revived him." The old man said, "Thanks, I obviously saw that, but what's in it?" Then the doctor pretended not to hear him. The news spread quickly all over the village. All the people wanted the doctor to stay there and cure their sick relatives. Now, in this village, there was a certain strong man. Let's just call him a mafia boss, because that's effectively what he was. And he owned a shop where he sold medicinal herbs. You may think this is an odd job for a mobster to have, but what's important to understand is that a lot of the herbal traditions in China came through martial arts sects and martial art groups, and some of them were thugs. Just a matter of historic fact. We like to, romanticize them, like in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Actually, the characters in that movie were outlaws. It was a mafia movie. Unless you're Chinese and have that background, you probably just think that they're these fairies jumping from tree to tree. Reality, yeah, they're kind of thugs. So, this martial art group, led by the mafia boss, sees this doctor as competition. Obviously, they're doing pretty well. You can think of them like a modern pharmaceutical industry. They don't necessarily want people butting in on their territory. So Mr. Mafia Boss, let's call him Chinese Don Corleone. So Chinese Don Corleone says, "Hey doctor, I'm really grateful for what you're doing around here. Let's throw a banquet in your honor." And the herbal doctor said, "Sure, fine, what can I do for you?" Then the tyrant says, sit down, let's have a drink." So the doctor says, "How can I drink when I don't know what we're toasting to?" Then Chinese Don Corleone says, "Listen, about this pellet for reviving the dead. Yeah, when my men go and try to beat people up, some of them, they have really good kung fu and they beat my guys up half to death. I could really use that pellet because then, they're not sick for 6 months and limping around and still on my dime. I'd much rather they got back on their feet so they could go shake other people down for money." Then Chinese Don Corleone said, "Plus, we can make a fortune if we sell it." The herbal doctor said, "Nah, I can't do that. Buxing, this pellet is handed down in my family, and it's only used to save people. I can't use it to make money off of people." So Chinese Don Corleone says, "Yeah, fine. If you want to give it away for free, hey, I'm here to accept it for free. And I can promise you whatever you want." The herbal doctor just shook his head and was like, nah, I can't do that. I don't feel right about it. So Chinese Don Corleone said, listen, buddy, I made you an offer you can't refuse. If you're refusing it, and you don't want to offer it to me, I can't stop my guys here from breaking your legs. But Mr. Herbal Doctor wasn't that flexible. He said, no matter what you do, these are only for patients. I don't even care. Do your worst. So, Chinese Don Corleone waved his hand, and several Goombas dragged the Herbal Doctor to the yard and beat him half to death. And they threw him out the window onto a rocky surface. He flopped down the hill like a rag doll. Filled with pain, the Herbal Doctor did his best to climb up the mountain, and he got some medicinal herbs, boiled them up, and drank them. It wasn't miraculous and it wasn't great, but within a month, he was back to selling medicine from village to village. Seeing this, Chinese Don Corleone called his hatchet men. He has axe guys. This is a really bad dude. And he said, yeah, go break that guy's legs again. So, they attacked the Herbal Doctor the second time, and they beat him even more severely and broke his legs in several places. Then they threw him into a valley where there were known to be wolves. Okay, Herbal Doctor here definitely needs some karate lessons. This is like the Karate Kid, only there's no Mr. Miyagi. He's just getting messed up badly. So, lesson number 1. If you're going to do a good deed, expect to get your legs broken. That's life. No good deed goes unpunished. 2, if you're dealing with the mafia, make sure that your karate is really good. Make sure you've got the kung fu grip. That way you can really hold on to your secrets. So, anyway, Herbal Doctor's crashing around, screaming, and alerting the local wolves that it's time for dinner. Now, this time, Herbal Doctor couldn't even get to his feet. So he just kind of lied there. What else is he going to do? But perchance there was a woodcutter who saw all of this, and he was a kind-hearted woodcutter. He's the kind of woodcutter who would save Little Red Riding Hood. Let's just assume he saved Little Red Riding Hood, and now Mr. Awesome Woodcutter has come to save the Herbal Doctor. The Herbal Doctor couldn't speak, so he gestured to the young man to carry him on his back up the mountain, and he pointed at which grasses the young man should pick in order to help him. He found an herb with feather-like leaves and purple flowers. The woodcutter immediately dug up the grass, carried the old man home, and began tending to the Herbal Doctor. Within 2 months, the Herbal Doctor's bones had grown back together. The Herbal Doctor said, listen, woodcutter guy, this place sucks. I really don't like my welcome here. I'm leaving. But before I do, you're really kind-hearted, so I want to pass on the knowledge of how to cultivate and use this medicinal herb so that you can help other people. Plus, if those axemen come for you, you already have an axe, which will give you a little bit of advantage when they come to beat you up for selling herbs. The young woodcutter said, thanks, I think. But while they were talking, the mountain tyrant came again with his hatchet men. They saw that the Herbal Doctor was still alive, and they were like, alright, just chop off his head. And they did. This is a Chinese story, so don't expect a happy ending. No good deed goes unpunished. You show off your skill, they kill you. That's the moral of the story. However, the young man, the woodcutter, passed on the knowledge about the medicinal herb to the villagers, and he named it Shu Duan, meaning that it could set broken bones. However, the itinerant Herbal Doctor's pellet for reviving the dead was lost, as well as the intricacies of the original formula. To give some cultural background, there are many martial art groups, many societies, mountain temples associated with martial arts who have very specific formulas for not only healing broken bones, but increasing bone density so that their bones don't break during fights. It's a very practical thing to have. If other people have brittle bones and you happen to have harder bones, every time they punch and you block, it sends a shockwave of pain through their body. How do I know this? Because I've gone through bone conditioning since I was about 15, and I've used this herb in particular that was described in this story. which is 续端, and I didn't use it alone but as part of a larger formula. What is described in this story is really just the tip of the iceberg. A few months ago I was in Sichuan, and I met a Kung Fu master. Now, he's not the kind of Kung Fu master who teaches foreigners how to do pretty dances on the top of a mountain temple. He's an inheritor of one of these systems that dates back hundreds of years. His students are bodyguards, and by that I mean hired thugs. So there are people sometimes in China that, because of their political connections, the police can't get to. And the police will actually hire these guys to take out the trash. It's not unlike Zorro. When you have a society where the government is highly corrupt, you can't always depend on police to save the day. Sometimes you have to use these alternative private security forces. So his group is very well known for their footwork, and each one of his students who is kind of a head bodyguard can run through groups of people and take out about 20 to 30 guys. This may sound incredible, but as we go through, as we start sharing more knowledge, you'll start to understand how and why this is. Until around the 1980s, it was very difficult to get high-quality hospital access within rural areas, and it still is. Within this particular sect of Kung Fu, which comes from a branch of Omei, which is a mountain in southern China, they use a mixture of herbs like Shuduan with various snake venoms. And it's said to be able to heal bone fractures within a couple of weeks. This is something that's outside the norm of regular Chinese medicine. For the most part, people don't mess with snake venoms, and many of these snakes are protected or endangered. So I say this to illustrate that there is a high level of Chinese medicine trauma care available. There are herbs that stop bleeding, and there are herbs that help knit bones together. Within the West, we basically have what? You take some calcium supplements and hope for the best. But there's nothing that really increases the osteogenesis to knit that bone back together quickly. And there certainly is very little available that will increase your bone density so that your bones don't get broken in the first place. So this is something I really wanted to highlight today because this is incredibly valuable. It's something that every athlete who engages in a contact sport should be aware of, and everyone who's getting older and is experiencing decreasing bone density and osteoporosis should also know about this, because once you get to be about 70, you fall down, your hip is not the same hip as it was when you were 30. You start to develop bird bones. They can become very light. When these break, it can be very, very difficult to heal. Now, how is it that I was able to meet this Kung Fu master who doesn't put himself out there and doesn't want to be known generally to the public? It's because since I was a kid, I've been in a similar tradition of Chinese medicine and martial arts. My own tradition goes back to Laoshan, to the San Qinggong lineage there. I already have inside knowledge to much of this. There are many formulas that are kept only for emergencies and not generally revealed to outside people. And the reason for this, it may seem almost criminal. Why would you guard a medicine? You have to remember that the idea of public knowledge is relatively new even in the West. It's, really only a couple hundred years that knowledge was put out there for everybody. Before this, it was kept in guilds. And if we really look at cutting-edge knowledge, it's patented. That's called IP. That's intellectual property. So having these secret formulas was a way of protecting their intellectual property, giving them an advantage over their competitors and advantages over potential threats. So let's say the woodcutter had a few buddies and these mafia thugs were coming after him. And they both broke each other's bones, but woodcutter guy could get back on his feet in 1 month, and the mafia guys had to take 4 months in order to heal. We can see right away who has the advantage. And these advantages were used throughout Chinese history, in cases of wars, to fend off epidemics, to just make sure that your side is stronger than a potential competitor's side. We see the use of medicine in war throughout world history. From Roman soldiers to Chinese emperors, the use of medicine can give one side a decided advantage. Around 900 AD, the emperor of the Tang dynasty, Tang Mingzong, was hunting when a golden leopard decided to ruin his day by pouncing. His favorite concubine was startled and she fell off her horse. Now keep in mind that the Tang Dynasty standard of beauty was fat. I mean, really thick. Even white boys got to shout, "Baby got back," that kind of thick. So when she fell, she landed like a rock. When she hit, it was with some power. It was with some heft. Her legs were immediately broken and she was bleeding. Most of the royal doctors were back at the palace having tea. Fortunately, the imperial soldiers had some of the best kung fu in China, and with it, high-level skills for treating traumatic injury. The head soldier knew what to do and ordered his men to go up into the hills and gather a certain herb. They smashed it up and used it as a poultice. This stopped the concubine's bleeding. Later, the concubine took the herb internally, and her bones soon grew back together. The emperor was pretty thrilled, so he named the herb Gu Sui Bu, which means broken bone fixer. Now, Emperor Tang Mingzong was many things, but obviously not that creative when it came to naming herbs. However, the name was practical and it stuck. And it's one of the main herbs used for increasing bone density and for fixing broken bones. The traditional understanding of bones and bone density was that kidneys rule the bones, and the state and health of your kidneys can determine how fast your bones will regrow and also how resilient your bones are to breaking in the first place. Curiously enough, all of the herbs which are used for increasing bone density also have very direct effects on the kidneys themselves. And this is in part because the kidneys in the body do in fact help to govern how much calcium is in your bones versus how much is in your blood. It helps to determine how much bone is being created or taken away, and it does this in cooperation with the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Now we'll take a look at the pharmacology to see how much of this was true and how much of it was folklore. First of all, the herb Shu Duan, Radix dipsaki, which the traveling herbalist used to repair his bones against the hatchet men, works on the expression of the CBFAL gene. This is essential for transcription factor in bone formation. It's expressed in the testes from the same promoter used in bone. It improves immunity, kills pain, has anti-inflammatory effects, promotes bone regeneration, and it's used in formulas for osteoporosis, osteonecrosis, that means when the bone tissue is just dying. It's not used to cure them, but it has been shown to reduce rates of bone loss and preserve bone density in these kind of chronic degenerative cases of bone loss. The second herb, which was used by the Tang Emperor's concubine, Gu Sui Bu, Drinaria fortunae, signals the gene expression of osteonectin and osteopontin. These serve to connect bone tissue together via the extracellular matrix, as well as help to recruit calcium to the collagen. This extracellular matrix helps to stop traumatic bleeding. So the first part of the story, where the concubine falls off and she breaks her legs and is bleeding, this checks out. If they made a poultice from this, it could theoretically stop the bleeding. This is supported both by tradition and by recent animal trials. When taken internally, it reduces the rate of bone loss and increases the rate of bone generation. Interestingly enough, both of these herbs increase the genetic expression of bone morphogenetic protein 2, which stimulates the production of bone. When these two herbs are combined together, they serve to reduce osteonecrosis caused by corticosteroid use in immune diseases. So when people have rheumatoid arthritis or other chronic pain or immune diseases, the go-to is to give people corticosteroids, your prednisone and other steroids that are used. The use of steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs is often used for pain and inflammation. One of the side effects is that they increase bone loss. These herbs cannot reverse this process, but they can slow it down dramatically and reduce the damage caused by the corticosteroids. So the verdict from both a traditional and pharmacological point of view is yes, these herbs will help to increase bone density because they not only help with bone regeneration at a genetic level, they reduce the speed at which bone is lost. It's important to remember that bone is always being created and it's always being broken down, and this process is called bone remodeling. We tend to think of our bones as, kind of pieces of wood or rocks, but really, they're more like a window. If you look at an old house that's maybe 50 or 60 years old, you can see the glass has started to wave, because although the glass looks like a solid, it's in fact a liquid. And in many ways, our bone has a very fluid quality to it, because every time you knock bone on bone, you're signaling bones to be repaired and broken down. And where bone density increases or decreases has a lot to do with the muscles that are pulling on it, the state of health with our body, our inflammatory system, and the health of our kidneys as well. So all of these play a role in bone density, in bone conditioning, in bone remodeling. This is very, very important if you want to go through life and be resilient to all of the changes that can come at you, whether it's simply aging or being chased by a bunch of mafia hatchet men. You never know what's going to happen. Make sure that you stay resilient so that you can adapt to anything. So this sounds great, right? It sounds like, wow, everybody should just be putting this in their cereal, right? Well, no. Both of these herbs will play a role on the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, so they're not appropriate for everybody. It's important to look at each person's individual condition. Sometimes bone remodeling has interference because people have water retention or gut dysbiosis, which is preventing them from absorbing vitamins like vitamin D. We can't just make an assumption and say, hey, you want stronger bones? Here, take these herbs. It's always important to look at the individual and see what is needed, if anything, and then go from there. Okay, cats and kittens, today we're going to go through the drawing to determine which one of you attractive, beautiful people will become even more beautiful by way of having the Astragalus facial cream. Now, if you're so beautiful, why do you need help? Let's just say that age is on none of our sides. However, this may just push you over the edge and get you that second modeling contract. So here goes nothing. All right. And our winner today is Zach Krebs, very handsome man who is about to get even more handsome. Remember to keep taking those screenshots of yourself rating, hopefully a wonderful review on iTunes or Stitcher, and sending it to us at botanicalbiohacking@gmail.com. Next month, it's on behalf of Enlightened Tea. Eric Manstoff will be giving away a packet of Enlightened Tea. This is Xiaoyao tea. It's very high quality, wonderful stuff. I drink it periodically. By periodically, I mean just about every day when someone's mean to me. It happens, folks. They're mean to me. I don't want to keep it inside. Also, I don't like yelling at people. It makes me hoarse. So instead, I take Enlightened Tea. It helps me to chill out and get my chi nice and flowing. Gears down those cortisol levels to keep my belly fat at bay.